God. Okay. Monica, did you have any questions about that vocabulary?
No, I think I got it, but it'll be interesting to see some examples, like some of the ones towards the end. They sound kind of similar, like the cob and the mud and all those.
Yeah,
kind of similar.
the cob and the straw bale are popular alternative construction in the United States now. People are building as alternatives. People are using those. Sometimes with cob, they'll put bottles in it, or they'll put pieces of split wood, like firewood, in the mud. It doesn't do too much for the structure. It just makes it more interesting looking.
Well, is that the one we were saying that's like greener and it's better for the environment because it's using natural material?
Yeah, that's the impetus behind it now as an alternative in this country. Yeah. But people have used straw bale in the past, all over the world, where they harvest straw. Where they have cattle and they harvest straw. The cob, there were Native Americans in the Phoenix, Tucson area. There's a famous, there's a town in between Tucson and Phoenix called something Grande. What's it called? Anybody from Arizona? No. And that town actually is formed around this structure that the Indians built that was just mud. They just piled mud on mud. It was 2 stories. So if you have the right kind of clay that's fairly structural, you actually can do something without any other structural things. That's pretty interesting. And it's been there a long time. They finally put a roof over it to preserve it. But the Wallen daub, I don't know if they have another name for that. That's an old architectural term that they've used for centuries. And that kind of building is what Yaqub talked about in Afghanistan. And they used it all over Europe for a long time. Because they had bushes and trees with branches and they had mud, so they would just put those together. Anyway, let's take a look at examples of these things. And I'm going to have you, we'll talk about that later. So where should we start? Hold on, let me arrange this. Okay, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah.
Yep. So how's this for a URL or a inquiry? Pictures of cement wall houses in Italy after World War II. So when I was much younger, I went to Italy to visit, and a lot of the houses had concrete floors and concrete walls. So I have that in my memory, and it wasn't right after World War II, but it wasn't that long after World War II ended, 20 years maybe. And so I tried to find examples of that. That's why I got real specific on the question, on the on my question. So let's see if we can find, and then they have all kinds of stuff. They have modern buildings, of course, that are all concrete. But I remember finding one. So you see this building here? Let's see if we can get a, no, why does it want to do that? It's a realty website. But this is typical of the way they used to look. Monica, have you been to Italy? Probably Spain similar.
Yeah, my cousin lives in Tuscany, near Florence, and
Oh, okay.
every
Okay.
house that she's lived in, besides like her new modern house, like all the older houses look like this. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's in a little, it's not, she lives in the country as well, so it's not really in a city, it's kind of out in the outskirts, so
Right.
a lot of the
Right.
houses look like that.
Yeah. So I don't even know what we would call this style in the United States, but the walls are usually concrete and the floors are concrete. So this is really common throughout the world, especially after the war. I'm not sure why they decided to do it. I think it's because they can go up fast. Anyway, what's interesting is
So cheap, let's move there, 58,000 euros.
what's that?
And it's cheap, let's move there, 58,000 euros
Oh yeah,
for a house.
I know. You know, it's funny. This website. You know, I had after World War II. So here's the pictures of what it actually looked like after World War II. A lot of bombing in Italy. So I think Italy doesn't have a lot of forest left, so they couldn't go with wood. Whereas Germany was also bombed pretty heavily, but they bounced back and they still used wood because I think they have a lot more forest there. Yeah. So I'll save the Peru one for Carla when she gets back, but let's look at a. Now, can you see this still?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're going to South America. We went from Europe to South America in the flip of a switch. And South America is a big place, right? It's a whole continent. You know, it's probably, well, it's much bigger than the United States, but it's like North America. They're big continents. So you're going to have quite a bit of variety. Where Carla lives is part of South America, so we'll focus more on Peru if she gets here. But quite a variety of styles, but still a lot of concrete. Here's stick frame here. Sometimes they have pictures that aren't even of the places you're looking at, but here's a view of a lot of concrete being, walls and foundation, everything concrete. Same over here. So this is pretty common in South America as well.
it's interesting to see, like, when you search for this one, it's the same search minus the place, but see
Yeah.
how many like modern houses came up like in
Yeah.
South America, rather than like, I guess like this type of modern concrete house is not as popular in Italy, but a lot of modern like new houses have come up on this search. So maybe this is like a style, or like this is a style of architecture that's popular or getting more popular in South America for modern homes.
Yeah,
with
you
the
know,
flat concrete.
right. When I teach my credit classes, sometimes we get into architecture from around the world, and I have a lot of, sources and books for these things. But South America is actually pretty advanced in that. We tend not to hear a lot about South America. The most we hear about is, usually we hear about Mexico and Central America, and usually that in a problematic way. And we don't really spend much time looking at South America, but the architecture there is spectacular. They do a lot of modern, really interesting type buildings. And I knew that was true, and I was hoping to get sort of middle class buildings of the last 50 years. And they're in here, but you're right, it's a mix of everything. Yeah, see, I can't, you might see that's not even in South America. Any word in the keywords will have pictures. So because I mentioned America, they'll have US pictures too, but there's a great looking building. It's a zombie proof house. There you go.
No
Yeah,
windows.
I guess
at
zombies
all.
can break windows and doors. So I don't know how you get into it. It's pretty hard to foolproof yourself against zombies, I understand. So here we go, Bolivia. So this is obviously a country picture, and that could be, blue concrete house, it says. So, whereas you'd think that might be adobe, and maybe at one point it was adobe, but apparently this is concrete. So even in the country, in the poorer areas, they're using concrete and tile, and of course, corrugated, maybe where the tile has gone away. Yeah, see, here's more country pictures. When you get down here, traditional South America house, this looks like streets in Mexico too, right? That would be like that. And this doesn't say whether they're concrete or not, but I imagine they're either adobe or concrete. Okay, so I want to show you one, and then I want to show you a video on actually how they. Yeah, you're right. I'm just plugging in the the continent. So here's Africa, right? It's interesting how these all look the same, huh? So so this right here looks like a cob house because you don't see separate bricks. Yeah, so it looks like that's just mud. Sometimes they put forms on, or sometimes they'll just um, stack it, and and in a pretty dry, not real runny shape, like a clay ball you'd use in ceramics, and then they just let it sit up a little bit, and then they add another layer on top of it. Looks like it was layers, and then it's cracked naturally. And then there's just a lot of precast concrete. Um, Now here's a 3D printed. Do all of you know what a 3D printer is? Class?
Yes.
They're actually making houses. I'll show you part of a video of a house being made by a 3D
Third
printer.
dimension.
Yeah, who's ever brought their helicopter to class? Can you mute that? Yeah, here's the 3D printer again. I've got another. I have very mixed feelings about that. Anyway, so Africa is very similar too. These are uh,
Good morning.
Jakub.
Yes, I was trying to do a login. I don't know what happened. I called office and everything. And then Canvas also, I try to go to Canvas, it says it denied the access.
Oh, so
From
how'd you eventually get onto it?
I don't know. I mean, I just try to go to the link before like 2 weeks ago. They sent me the link
Yeah.
and I just try to log in there and it will eventually taking me to the Friday class.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
And Canvas, it says that I'm not allowed to access the Canvas, the program.
Oh, why is that?
I don't know. That's why I thought you knew about it.
No, I haven't heard anything. Well, we'll just have to get, explore it and see what's going on. But this is but Monica,
Yeah,
the Zoom that the students are using, the Zoom link,
yeah.
where did they get that?
I think, I don't give, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that your advisor gave you all the links and they have like a calendar, like a Google Calendar that they can access all their links for their classes. Like for the morning class and then the afternoon class and the
Right.
Friday class. So they should have got from either like Roberto, Mari, or whatever their student advisor
Okay,
probably emailed it to them.
okay.
That wasn't sent till this morning, because last night I checked for the link on the
Yeah.
Google Calendar and it wasn't there. And this morning when I opened up my laptop, it was.
Okay, so they sent it early this morning.
Yeah.
So why did they have to resend it? They just dropped it by accident or something, you think?
I'm not sure, maybe because it's a new class, maybe.
Oh,
But it's this,
yeah.
but it is the same link. So like what I usually do is I just go into my email and I can open up the same old link. So it's the link for this class is not going to change. It's going to be the
Yeah.
same the whole time.
Right.
So I don't know
So-
if you can save it. You guys save that link somewhere really handy, just in case you can't log into your pipeline. Like Jakub was saying, you get blocked out of your pipeline or locked out of your pipeline, it doesn't work. Try to keep the link somewhere else, like on your personal email or on your personal
Right.
calendar. And then hopefully if that happens, you'll have it still,
Yeah.
What about
So
Canvas? In Canvas also, I mean, I knew it like Patrick told me, like if you don't have that link, you can go to Canvas and there should be a link. And the Canvas didn't let me log in. I mean,
Yeah, so if you get locked out of your pipeline, you can't get on Canvas. That's true.
So copy and paste, like Monica said, copy and paste the link from wherever you have it now and put it on something that's not on Canvas or Pipeline. Because both, Pipeline goes off too sometimes.
Yeah,
at
save
school.
it to like your personal email or like your personal calendar somewhere and not related to school. So just in case
Yeah.
that happens, because it happens to me too, like, I don't know, like one Friday evening, they're doing like updates on something on Pipeline
Right.
and I'm like trying to log into my class and I'm like, I can't get in. So
Yeah,
you
I
kind of
know.
have to keep it somewhere
Yeah.
else just in case.
yeah. Everybody got that?
yes.
I've learned to bookmark specific
Yeah.
pages, because when you try to go through the process and the redirects start acting up, like
Right.
having it bookmarked and being able to click on that helps.
Okay, good advice. Francisco, is that you? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can bookmark it too. So a lot of you guys are pretty savvy about computers, most of you. So, you know the kind of ways you can put it. But the main thing is having it outside the school system, whether it's Pipeline or Canvas, because those are the ones that get screwed up. Okay, so Africa has just a lot of different, and Africa still has villages that have like down here that have mud. You don't see they're mostly mud and adobe. You don't see a lot of just pure thatched, like India has some tribes that actually have thatched roof, more like our Native Americans would have, like wiki up type things. But in Africa, you don't see that. You see, there must be an abundance of clay-like mud there to make houses. All the way on up to the middle class is using concrete now, and then the upper classes are just using everything available around the world. So I want to show you a place. A couple places in India. The first one is Kerala. It's the southern, India goes down to a point, kind of like South America a little bit. And on the left, the west coast is a province called Kerala. And it's very progressive. It's got the most literacy. It's got its literacy rates equal to the United States. And it treats women really well. And that's a problem in the rest of India. So it's a very progressive state. It's been partly communist over the years. Their kind of communism is a little different than Russian or Chinese. It just means it's very local, controlled. And they've really done a lot. And they do construction out of here's cinder block, but they'll have a lot of concrete. And they're pretty nice houses. I mean, this is pretty typical. It has a carport, but even the lower and middle classes get pretty good houses in this province. So the architecture is really fascinating, isn't it? Look at something like this. Yeah, it's always nice to see a place in the world that's really doing well and providing for its people. So Kerala is a really great place.
Wait, did you say that those are concrete or is that brick? The ones that you're showing us?
They're concrete.
They're concrete. Oh.
Yeah, most of the stuff's concrete. I see a little brick here and there, but like here's kind of a compressed earth block. That was started in the south, not in Kerala, in a place called Oroville, which I'm going to show you next. They actually perfected a technique of compressing the earth block. So sometimes the adobe is not clay, it has not enough clay content just to make a form a natural brick. So they have this little press that compresses them. So that's a new form, but something like this here, which is really typical, will be concrete. But look at all the fancy decoration they do with concrete on the outside. It's kind of interesting, huh? I mean, India has a great, as Jakub knows, has a great history of temple architecture. And so they're not lacking architectural motifs at all. And let me show you one more place in India. Jakub, I don't know if I asked you if you've been to Oroville in the south, Pondicherry.
You did. I mean, I never been to Kerala, but I did by Goa, more south,
Yeah, right.
by Portuguese.
So this is an international community. It was founded by a woman religious person, a form of Hinduism, and she was connected to a very famous Indian saint
Mother
and
Teresa?
philosopher. And she decided to build an international community in South India and draw people from all over the world. And they're supposed to be committed to this type of religious thing, but I have a friend who moved there and I went once to visit her. And the people range from very fanatic followers of this kind of cult to just people that barely pay attention to it and just want to live in an international community. But the thing I noticed was the architecture is really, they've developed, the woman was French, French Moroccan. And so the French of the Europeans, French and German have frequented it most. I mean, it's got Asians and Indians and South Americans, but the French architects came, and so they started developing this ferro cement, the cement, reinforced cement. And they have, why does that do that? They have really interesting shapes. Let me see if I can get, like, see this, I don't know if this will, no. And now this Pinterest is a pain in the ass. Oh, there, great. Can you see this okay on the end here? I can't get it bigger.
Yeah, the sloped kind of one.
Yeah, the one on the right.
Looks like a skate park.
It
Looks like what?
does.
Looks like a ramp at a skate park, like you could skate
The
it.
vert ramp.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. But really interesting. You don't see this kind of architecture anywhere else in the world. And I show my classes this a lot because I really love this stuff. Another thing, in hot countries, they have these things called, in architecture, it's called brise soleil. It's French for sunscreens to block the sun, let filtered light in. And we've done that a lot. Mid-century modern, actually, in America, has a lot of this. If you go out to Palm Springs, they have, where the sun's very intense, they have a lot of these screens, but they make interesting textures. You can see here from the inside how it lets light in, but not so much hot sunlight.
So what do they do in the winter time, or is it just only mostly in places where it's not?
Well,
cold?
this Oroville's toward the equator, so it's pretty much hot all year round. It goes from hot to hotter.
Hot, more humid.
Yeah. Yeah, most of India is that way until you get to the Himalayas. It's, well, Yakub would know this too. It's, you know, Delhi in the north, but you're getting north toward the mountains is cooler. But all the whole south half of the country is pretty hot. See if I can find some interesting. Look at, that's a pretty broad span for a ceiling to have no you know, pillars except on the outside. India's a lot of the classrooms are just concrete floor and half walls because there's no need to have much protection from the outside. The weather's pretty warm. This particular set doesn't have a lot of as many interesting. They do a lot of arches. This might have brick. They have different communities in this international community. There's like 1,000 people that live here, and the different communities kind of compete in the buildings they make, which is kind of cool because then they keep upping the ante and they have. Oh, just another really interesting building. Come on. A lot of have these dome vaults over them, and that's all concrete, reinforced concrete. Okay, so Yakub,
Yes.
the clay and stick wall architecture in Afghanistan, is there a name, an English name? Do you know of it that they call that?
Not even clay, it's some mud.
Mud. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they get a mud and the hay, they mix it together and they smash it till they get, I don't know, kind of form something. And
Yeah.
they just, you know, build it.
Okay. So here's So this has got some stone. So parts of Afghanistan will have stone and they'll put the stone and mud together. This one's hard to tell, but it looks like it's more just mud, like you said. Let's see if we can find one. Now this is the country. Afghanistan has a few cities. The capital is more modernized, obviously, like all capitals, and it has, more international architecture. See, here's the capital here. So that looks like every other city in some ways. But Afghanistan's a country, and Jakob, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a few cities and towns, and then the rest is pretty rural. And so it will have a lot of these mud buildings. I wish I could get one being built. Jakob, were you born or grew up in Kabul or in a village somewhere?
No, Kabul.
Okay. Well, you get the idea. But there's not so much ferro cement that I know of in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Because they've been building this way for, probably thousands of years, and it suits them pretty well. I imagine in the north, well, not in the north, but Afghanistan probably everywhere gets cold in the winter.
Yes, they have snow.
Yeah, and at night. So these mud walls are not, they absorb heat from the sun, which is great during the day, but in the night they give it off pretty fast. So it's probably pretty cold in the early mornings in these kind of homes. And so cultures that have these, they just keep fires going, or they just wear a lot of warm clothes or a lot of warm, bed blankets and stuff. There's an inside. They're really beautiful. I'll show you. It's another point. Organization in California out near Victorville, out in the desert area above San Bernardino, above LA. And the guy was an Iranian, which is not far from Afghanistan, just south of Afghanistan, south and west. And he developed a type of building with sandbags. I told you about that. I'll show you a little film on that later. Maybe.
If you go to
later.
New Mexico, there's a little town. They have same houses in Afghanistan right now in New Mexico.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they have
Okay.
same house, same thing.
Yeah. Do you remember where?
New Mexico, Santa Fe?
Yeah. Okay.
I think Santa Fe. It was a long time. I've been there one time for the
Yeah.
business. So they
Yeah.
have same thing. They have on the roof, they put a big kind of wood thing, long wood. but
Yeah.
Then they
So-
put the
so-
wood and everything.
So Santa Fe traditionally was probably adobe brick, but they plaster over it so it looks like the walls in Afghanistan. Unless you see it built, you can't tell the difference between in any of those countries because they put a plaster over the outside so they all look alike. And then you're right, they have logs that go across the roof. And then it's an interesting exploration of how humans originally built houses, because it's easy to see how they build walls, but you've got to span a roof, right? You've got many feet you have to span with some kind of roof. And before we had complicated technology, what was available? So people put trees across the roofs, and then they would put maybe smaller branches across that, and eventually they'd put dirt on top of that. And that was done all over the world. I mean, what else can you do, right? Before we discovered metal and could make, corrugated metal roofs. It's you're pretty much stuck with trees and branches and mud on your roof. Okay, so let's go to Mexico City. So, Mexico City is a really cosmopolitan place, so it's going to have all these modern structures of every kind. I mean, look at this. Look at this. That's a pretty interesting structure, huh? It's all concrete with a little bit with wooden shutters. That's pretty wild. What's the inside like? Wow. That's a pretty elegant house, huh? And Monica had these great pictures of, well, it was roofs, and they were apartment buildings, right? In Mexico City. Yeah, this is all going to be modern stuff.
They are actually, the ones I was showing, we were talking about in our group last week, they're houses, but they're stuck together. You know how they're in cities, I think in Mexico, they're considered houses, but the walls usually touch. So they're not really apartment buildings. Like sometimes they'll have 2 stories and like a 3rd story with that roof that we were looking at, like that patio sort of roof.
Yeah. But they'll just have common walls sometimes between them. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, they'll share common walls or something, or garage walls sometimes. And but those are pretty typical houses in Mexico City, or like in a city in Mexico, maybe like Guadalajara.
Right. So like this picture here, I've seen a lot of travelogues of, I mean, whether it's Acapulco or, just all over the country, they'll have streets like this, and there'll be continuous frontage all along the street, and obviously they'll be separated into individual places. Must be a name for that. Here's a picture of, I mean, this is just really is cement, but these are also buildings run together. Yeah, look. Yeah, what's interesting is in a block like this, Coyoacan, I don't know, have any idea where that is? Probably, and I don't know.
It's a really, I mean, not wealthy people, but it's like a first class society from Mexico City.
Oh, that's in Mexico City. Okay.
Yeah.
So this or this version here, there's no space between the buildings like we've been saying, but they all have courtyards. So instead of having a lawn or a yard between houses or in front of the house, it will be on the inside, probably partly for protection, right? Because it's safe to have a courtyard on the inside that isn't accessible from the street. So maybe that's where that style came from. It's a little bit like the Native Americans built too. They would build structures and they would use the roofs as courtyards. There wouldn't be anything on the street level, probably for protection. Okay, so let's switch to.
It's interesting to see that like the United States is one of the only countries that has front yards. Like that we like when we're looking at all these pictures of like houses in different countries. Like why do the houses in the U.S. have like lawns and front yards? Like what is the use of that? I mean, it's just aesthetics, right? Because none of these other places have like front yards. Like.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so like, cause you can see like the house just backs up straight to the street or to the sidewalk in most of the, the houses, right? Like whatever is outside space or like green space is like in the property or maybe like on top or in the courtyard or in the backyard or something.
Right. Yeah, that's a good observation. You know, I don't know why that is. Although, I mean, our cities are all alike, you know, there's no space. That's why they have parks and stuff.
Mhm.
But our country was mostly farmland, right? Till actually not that long ago. And like if you go out toward Ojai, not Ojai, but Santa Paula, you'll see there's an old farming community and you'll see these farmhouses in the middle of the crop land, right? So maybe it
Mhm.
comes from that, you know, there'd be a farmhouse and there'd be a lot of greenery around it. And maybe
Yeah, for
suburbs,
animals or for,
yeah, and maybe suburbs took off from that. I don't know. Could probably find that out. It's a lot of waste of space. I mean, it's nice to see the greenery. I don't know. There's a lot of mixed feelings about what makes sense in terms of, um, for one thing, it takes a lot more land if you have front
Mhm.
lawns and stuff. Okay, let me go to, uh, can you still see this?
Yeah.
yeah.
Guys, is this your new normal?
My problem is right in the middle. It's all right here.
Yeah,
Lose
yeah,
the
yeah.
weight.
Okay, so besides the George Winston soundtrack, this is a building that I think it might be Africa. And it's just, there's probably a lot of different ways they do ferro cement, but um, the two main ways are to cast the walls, precast them in a factory or a shop. And they would just make these big, you know, 8 by 10 walls, and then they truck them over to the house and stand them up and connect them together. That's the old way. And now they're spraying cement onto metal frames, and that's actually easier because you don't need to truck to haul things. You need very little tools. And so a lot of that, this is how that's working today. So I'll just skip through this. But first they'll show them putting a frame up and then they'll show them spraying. So they'll weld the joints. So it looks like they put a temporary form in back. So again, we have the problem of a roof, and it looks like they have timber. They got some wood for these are called purlins. And then they're using corrugated. This is another product that's universal around the world because it's fairly cheap. And I mean, you see this everywhere: Philippines, South America, Central America, Africa. And it's corrugated so the water can run off it pretty easily, and it's really easy to install. So that's become the look of a lot of the world today. So you notice that some of them actually use the native indigenous roofs, the thatching kind of roofs. It actually made the buildings look a little better. But those are, a lot of the world's very poor, and those structures didn't have a lot of aesthetic architectural value to them. They were just the simplest way to get 4 walls and a roof, which is what people need. So, but that shows you a little bit. They didn't actually spray that. That was my mistake. They mostly did that by hand. But a lot of places they'll take a sprayer and they'll spray the cement onto the. Okay, let's see. Hold on a second. Okay, now I wanted you to see this. This is really crazy here.
Your interior of your home is a self-reflection of who you are as a person. So much of interior design.
We're going to take a look at a 2-story 3D printed house designed by Mensekorte, an architecture firm in Germany. Built with an autonomous printing machine capable of working day and night. This model is the most innovative and intricate 3D printed house to date. Mensekorte has deeply considered all of the possibilities this printer has to offer and implemented many of them in the design of this building, largely on-site, parallel or joined with a horizontal bar that will enable the y-axis for the printer. The other 3 on the opposite side will have a similar setup. One more horizontal beam will run on a track between the 2 other horizontal beams in order to operate the x-axis for the printer. They may have a designated person for electrical and plumbing fixtures. Another person must control the heavy concrete hose pumping into the extruder head, and one more person standing by for safety's sake, who can adjust, pause, or stop things if necessary from the computer. The material they're using is called iTech 3D. It was developed by Heidelberg Cement AG and was specifically developed for 3D printing. The construction technology, which was carried out for the first time in Germany, passed all official approval processes without any problems. Many people think 3D printing is a way to make a house without any effort, but it certainly requires some oversight if you want things to go smoothly. This guy is measuring the temperature of the concrete to know how quickly it will cure. Gaps can be made in the wall for M&E equipment by angles and something
So you see
completely
there's
different
gaps on
from
the
anything
wall.
we've seen before. Let's check out a rendering of what it may look like when it's complete. I have many of the projects we see, that's why they look so good, which is either pre-cut to size, center of gravity, improves the structural stability of the home. From this bird's eye view.
So you can see that they have hollow places in the walls, probably for wiring and plumbing. But there's no structure. There's no, I don't see a lot of rebar. This is just concrete. I'm not sure what this is here, but this is just concrete dropped from that 3D printer. So I'm not sure how it could be, strong enough. But we'll see what they say.
You're able to see the white insulation in the exterior of the walls.
Oh yeah, down
This
here.
is probably a foam insert insulation, which is either pre-cut to size or sprayed in between the gaps of the wall. You may have noticed the makeshift tent that they're printing in. This tent prevents the outside elements from influencing the quality of their layer lines. That's why they look so good. Now we'll take a look inside. There's the fireplace I was talking about. It looks like it might make for a great pizza oven. They truly printed almost everything. Many of the projects we see are just a printed shell of a building that needs to be completely constructed from the inside. But this one, after the 3D printer is done, looks almost complete. There's nothing boring or basic about this building. Every single aspect is strange curvature, unique angles, and something completely different from anything we've seen before. Let's check out a rendering of what it may look like when it's complete. I have to say, Mensekorte did a terrific job. Architecture has a reputation for being stuck in its ways, but they've gone completely out of the box to discover something completely new. The design elements of this building are incredibly unique because they're tailored to the capabilities of the concrete 3D printer that created it, and not just the aesthetic things visible to the naked eye. The guts of this building are just as impressive as the design. It seems they've taken advantage of the freeform style of the printed concrete to minimize the total distance of wire and piping necessary for the building. The floor plan is quite open and modern. I believe the home was sold to a private buyer, so it's unclear whether or not an interior tour will ever be publicly available. While we're talking about some of the mechanical equipment, it's an appropriate time to mention that once again we see an MTech machine featured on the build site. If anyone from MTech is watching this, you guys should sponsor my channel.
Whoop. So that's pretty interesting, huh? I have a lot of misgivings about that, about we keep going with higher tech solutions, but all that requires, first of all, computer work, and we're not going to have computers forever. We're running out of materials that make computers. In 50 years, we'll probably be out of a lot of the metals. And, you know, you can spray a ferro cement and it will have a more structural metal core almost as easily with less technology. You know, a spray device is a very simple form of technology. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think people are doing it they're just pushing the envelope. Oh, we can do this. Look at how great this is. But I don't know. So the end point is don't accept this kind of stuff just because people are doing it. You know, there's ethical issues with everything, and including the use of cement. So we didn't talk about this. We've been showing a whole world of cement houses, and cement's actually a controversial product right now. When they make cement, they use huge amounts of energy. So, and you could provide that with solar power. They don't often do that. And it also emits a lot of greenhouse gases that they haven't been able to figure out how to keep out of the atmosphere. So that in itself is not very good. So cement, it's a simple, fast product. So when people need houses in a hurry around the world, they use it. But we need to question that too. So later in the class, this is just the first session, but later sessions, we'll talk about sustainability in building. And, you know, it used to be we didn't realize that there were a lot of problems with resource use and toxics and waste. And that's all come back on us in the last 20, 30 years. And now we're really conscious of these products and things. And so we have to look at everything from that lens from here on out. So we'll just do a little bit of that because that's not the major focus of this class, but I think it's something we need to touch upon. Any questions about any of that? Like I said, I didn't have it ready for today, and I didn't want to do the whole period of this. You guys will fall asleep, but I'll show you what used to be called super adobe. I think they may call it sandbag construction now, but it involves any kind of sand. And you know, the limit to adobe building, which has been good throughout our history, is that you have to have soil that will stick together, clay soil. If you don't have that where you are, like in the middle of the desert, the soil's sandy, it's not clay at all. You have to have rivers and, you know, that kind of movement of. This one, you can put anything in the bags because the bags hold it together. Sometimes they put a little cement into the mix, but usually it's just sand, but the bags hold it together, and then they build a home with it, and I'll show you how that's done. And then they plaster the outside just like they would adobe or any these kinds of buildings we've been looking at. Maybe if I have a straw bale, I'll show you an example of a straw bale being built. and maybe a cob house, but we'll look at those later. So let's take a break for 10 minutes now. You guys have been watching a lot of this, and then we'll look at some stuff after that. Monica, is that good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Great time.
So, yeah, so 25 after, come back and we'll do some more. All right,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
So we're coming back around 10:25 or what time?
10:25, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
cool.
Hello there.
Hey. Okay. How are we doing? Is everybody back?
Yeah. Hey, guys.
So can we look at a few more things and then break into a chat group? And we'll talk and do
Yeah.
some exercises.
Yeah.
I keep talking about these things and not showing you what I'm talking about. So let me just cover a few more real quick here. Oh, darn. Okay, there's a place in, I was telling you, in above LA, in a town called Hesperia. It's kind of out in the high desert above San Bernardino. And it's called the Cal Earth Institute. There's a directions here. But they make these are those sandbag super adobe. Let's see if I can get a picture of them making one. So they fill these, there's a guy, you can see that person there. Yeah, why don't they ever do what I want? So can you see this person holding the bag up here?
Yeah.
See my cursor? So they're filling this bag with sand as they go. So these are all, and they're tied off at the end. And if they need a door, they'll put a wood jam in to stop the bags from coming to it. So this architect who started this program was a pretty prominent Los Angeles skyscraper architect, but he was from Iran, and he decided that he would devote his second half of his life to creating structures that made more sense than a lot of construction. So all these are North African and Iranian shapes, domes and vaults, and they're all made out of this technique. And when they get done with the place like this, then they just plaster over it. Sometimes the plaster has a little cement in it. This is like a group of little buildings together. Here's the inside of one place. They plastered it. Has kind of a dome with a skylight at the top. A lot of different kind of, working of the plaster. Here's the home. They're usually vaulted like this, or with a dome. What do you guys think of this stuff? There's the guy the founder.
It's really beautiful. So Is this Cal Earth Institute just for people to learn about it, or are people actually living here in these?
No, it's just to learn. They have programs, and you can go down and take a program on learning how to build these, or you can just go look at it. You can just take the day and go a tour. Look around the place. Yeah, people don't actually live there, but they've done a lot of different types of structures to show people how the variety of things. But they're actually very nice structures, and I used to take classes down there when I taught high school in Ojai, and when you go inside these things, the atmosphere is really, here's an insight, really calming. I don't know what it is, maybe the circular shapes, but they're really quite interesting, the feel of them. So that's something that's actually, this technique has been used in Central America and Philippines, tropical places, because you don't need insulation. So you can just do that single wall with the dirt. NASA even contracted him when they were trying to figure out how they were going to build on the moon or on Mars. You can't fill a rocket ship with a bunch of lumber and take it up there, right? Or steel, that'd be too heavy. So they figured they could take up bags and use whatever kind of sand or earth was at these, places like the moon. And so this would actually be the most economical way to get materials up to that site. So we've stopped, any kind of exploration of the moon and Mars in terms of building human habitat. So who knows what the future will bring. But I just thought you might. So you can look that up yourself under Cal Earth. But this website's growing. So, it'll tell you, you can actually get the material. So I built a dome like this at the school I was in Ojai, and we ordered the bags, a big roll or two of bags, and then you put barbed wire between the layers as it's going up. You just get a roll of barbed wire, and that kind of secures them from sliding around. You put it on top of each layer here, and then you put the next bag on top of that. Pretty interesting. The next one is straw bale. So here you can actually see it needs some kind of frame, but then you're taking bales of straw and those become the walls. And this is a really great technique because straw is it's got a lot of air in it, and it's very good insulation. So you have a 1.5 foot thick wall, and then they just plaster over it. Same kind of, either a natural plaster or a plaster that's got cement in it. It's a rough coat, and then they'll do a finish coat over that. And you can't tell them from other houses once the plaster's finished, but it's really a great, they're showing the plaster on the straw, but it's a great technique. It's been done in places where they have farm straw bales around the world, but people really like it. Now here's a cordwood. This is more like a cob, where they actually put pieces of firewood in the wall. So, but most places it has to have a frame because of earthquake problems. But once you put a frame, and then you can put straw bales in the middle. Here's a picture of people plastering. You can get the whole family involved in the plastering. And then the last one is cob. We talked about here. Definition: cob or clom is a natural building material made from soil, water, organic material like straw, and then sometimes they put lime in it.
Hi, and welcome to this webinar presentation, Quality of Life by Eliminating These Toxins That May Cause Them.
What rice does to human body?
Hey, go tell the Chinese.
Okay, next advantage is acoustic privacy to help in the building process. Main ingredient for cob. The topsoil is a thin layer of dark dirt that contains mostly the organic matter. Make sure all the clumps are well broken up. And then set your jar on a level surface and just let the sedimentation take place. So for the most accurate results, don't move the jar for at least 48 hours. And once the sedimentation has happened and everything is settled out, the water should become clear and you should be able to distinguish the.
So with cob, you know, you're going to need a lot of clay in the soil because it's got to stick together. If you tried building something out of sand, it would be like down the beach when you build a sandcastle. The waters would hold it together, but as soon as that water dried, the sand would pretty much fall apart. And then they're going to say put straw in it. Now, here's a really interesting thing. At least I think it's interesting. See this? What do you think they're doing here with this tarp?
Mixing mud?
Yeah, they're mixing all the ingredients. If you take a tarp, the Canadians do this. I had a Canadian teacher once down here, and he taught me this. You put you can make cement this way too. You put all the ingredients in there, and then a bunch of people grab the edges and just, you know, mush it around. It mixes really well and quickly. Pretty interesting. So let's go to where they have that's the crew. Did they ever show actually building the house? Maybe they never build a cob house. Well, that's sure a crappy film, huh? So that's what they look like on the inside when they're finished. Again, they use a lot of, oh, here's square, but it's round, or here they have jacks in the windows. They have to put something to keep the mud to make an area for a window. So this is they're kind of experimental houses that people are making. It's not mainstream at all. The doggies like it. Okay. Okay. Any questions about any of those? So they're mostly, you know, they're mostly people building their own homes now that are doing it as alternative. Anybody hear of the Back to the Land movement in America in the 60s and 70s? That's when the hippies came online, and a lot of people got tired of cities and they moved out to the country, and they started building homes, and they didn't have a lot of experience. They weren't necessarily builders. So they would do straw bale and cob and whatever things they discovered. And if you go out to Taos, New Mexico, just not far from Santa Fe, where Jakub was talking about, there's an area there that people build all kinds of experimental houses, and the building department has kind of let them, as long as they stay in that certain area, let them go wild. And so they have a lot of all different kinds, straw bale, cob, all different kinds of houses that they're experimenting with, just ordinary people. So it's kind of interesting. we call it a back to land movement, but in many countries, people have to build their own homes from whatever they have available. And they're not hippies or middle-class people that are moving to the country. They're people that don't have a lot of resources and just live in, areas all over. So,
I have a couple questions.
yeah.
You talked about like sustainability, but what about like affordability? Like which type of housing is the cheapest to put up? Like, or the
Well, that's a great question. It boils down to two things: the amount of labor you have and skilled labor. That's the tipping thing. So obviously houses that come from earth material, like mud, those are going to be cheaper because it's all around you. It's interesting if people build a cob house or an adobe house today somewhere and they don't have a river basin that's got mud, that's got clay soil, they have to actually buy the soil from somewhere else and ship it in. Then it becomes expensive again. So, these indigenous processes, we're always using materials that were at hand. But now we think, oh, isn't that cool? I want a house like that. But you may end up paying a lot to get that material to where you want it. So, but all of those are cheaper. The ones we just looked at, cob, straw bale, and ferro cement to some extent, if you have enough people doing it. If your labor is cheap or free, it's a group of people doing it, like a house raising, like we used to do here in the communities, or in the other parts of the world, people help each other build houses. Your labor is relatively free, then that keeps the cost down a lot. The cost of housing is utterly ridiculous now. I mean, not even in Santa Barbara, which is just ridiculous, but it's expensive in Santa Barbara because the land's so valuable. It's a beautiful place, and there's only so much land, so that makes the price high. But construction itself, the actual building of homes, is way too high now, and it's so unaffordable. And so these techniques would be good techniques to integrate into that, but the government doesn't know how to do that. We don't, as we've seen in the last year or two, governments are there for a reason and they try, but there's a lot of reasons why they fail a lot in trying to help people, bureaucracies and corruption and this and that. So that's unfortunate. And what people have done around the world is just take life into their own hands, and they've just made their own buildings. There was a place in Mexico, north of Mexico City. I've written about it in some books I've written. I've mentioned it. And it was a lot of poor people and kind of dispossessed people. And they went to a place that was a landfill. So the Mexico City government didn't care about it. And they got together, like 100 families, and they started helping each other build homes. And they got nonprofit businesses, like I think a water company that was really helpful to people, and they helped them with making plumbing and collecting rainwater, because it did happen to rain there a bit. And they created a whole little village, a whole town. This was just in the last 20, maybe 10 years, in the last 10 years. I'll get the name of it and let you know. And, they they helped each other, and they just created a community out of scratch on a landfill. It was really pretty amazing. And the government went in, there were some charity organizations. I don't know if they were governmental or not. And they said, they had grants, and they said, well, what do you people want the most? And instead of like sewer help or this or that, they said, we want to start a music schools, especially flamenco guitar, because they said that would hold the village together more than any kind of material thing. So they gave them money to create musical schools. So that's what they did. So it's really, to look at villages like that, it's really instructive, really interesting to see what people's values are and what's fundamental, and it's not big, expensive, slick houses. It's more communities, So I wrote that up because I thought that was a really instructive example of people taking their life in their own hands. They had nothing and they just got together and did it. So I'll get the name of that and give it to you if you want to look it up. It was hard to find. I heard it on a show on TV, and it was really hard to find on the internet, but I did track it down, so I've got that information. But yeah, I mean, a lot of you guys here, not a lot of you, some of you in this class are in the building industry or are planning to go more into it. And so, you'll maybe be constrained by the kind of building that's going on in the town where you live. Like in Santa Barbara, anything you build would have to pass a building code. Doesn't mean you can't do alternative structures. Took them a long time to accept straw bale in Ventura and Santa Barbara County, but they do accept it now. You have to get it engineered and make sure it's safe, but it's interesting, for so many years they wouldn't allow it. Even though our original houses here were adobe in Santa Barbara. So Monica, I wanted to share some outside structures was the other topic. But maybe we need to break it up before we just look at more stuff. Maybe we should break into the breakout rooms now.
Okay.
But this is what I had. This is what I had in mind. I mean, I just thought of this, to ask the students what, where they come from, where their parents or grandparents come from, if they're connected to somehow to a place outside of Santa Barbara, what kind of buildings were around, and they have that list that we have, and they can maybe match some of those types of, like ferro cement or straw bale or cob or adobe brick. Maybe they can match those to places where they're from. Like if Carla were here, I don't think she's going to make it, but
you know what? I think she might be in the waiting room.
Yeah, she's in
right.
the waiting room.
She is. I missed
Thanks,
the dawn.
Francisco.
I missed the bell. Great. Yeah, thanks. Welcome, Carla.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, she's there. Hi, Carla. Morning.
Hi, Carla. Francisco explained your situation, so we're glad you could make it. What we did this morning, Carla, is we showed a bunch of pictures from the internet on various places where they use concrete. And I had Peru as one of them, but you weren't here, so I didn't want to show it. So we'll get to it. But before that, we'll show that later. We have a list of different materials and processes that houses are built from, whether it's concrete or reinforced concrete or straw bale. Have you heard of straw bale houses, where they take bales of straw and use them for the walls? And what were some of the others? Well, anyway, we've got a list that we'll look at. And then we're going to ask students to talk about and write down which of those techniques are used in places where they're from, or their parents are from, or their grandparents. Any connection to an outside United States or outside Santa Barbara community where they're building. Yeah. So should we do that, Monica? I got my dog here because he's not well.
Yeah, that sounds good. So the students can contribute something. I have one more question about some of those in the video.
Yeah.
Do they not do, like, for a lot of those, do they not do like a foundation or anything before they start building, like the clay, or like, they just started, like in the video, they just started building that chapel with the ferro cement, like on top of the ground. They just choose a spot and start building that's flat?
Yeah. So it varies. If there's no building department telling them what to do, people usually, they usually try to build, it depends. If it's a desert area, like in the African things, they just build right on the ground because there's no water. It doesn't rain that much. They're not going to get flooded. If it's a place with a lot of water, they'll usually try to come up a little bit to protect from water. So if there's any stone in the area, they'll build a little stone. First part of the wall will be stone, and then they'll build up. So yeah, it depends. If they're in a place that's got a building code, and an international building code is pretty much the same, usually they have to have some kind of foundation, but they can do what's called a rubble trench foundation, which is an ancient one. And because you want the water to drain around the foundation, that's the main thing they want to do, is they'll dig a hole, a little ditch where the foundation is going to go, and they'll fill it with rock or rubble. And now we have to have a plastic draining those, but in the old days they would maybe slope them toward, if there was a little bit of a slant to the property, they'd slope them away from those drains, away from the house. And then they would just build on top of that rubble. The Japanese did that. All over they did that.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a great question, because that's pretty important, Yeah.
Yeah, we have like this like outside patio thing. It's like cement and it has no drainage or whatever. Like, so I was thinking like they just built it and they didn't put any sort of so like when it rains, it like gets really flooded. So like
they didn't slant the whole patio so it goes off to one side. Yeah.
No, it just collects puddles in the corner, and it's kind of like it's like a useless patio basically, because it sits with like dirty water in it like half of the year. But like if it rains a lot, it depends on if it rains, right? Like you said, if you live in a place where it doesn't rain at all and there's not a lot of water.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm sorry. I don't know if you ever have seen these videos in YouTube about these people in islands that they construct their houses with just mud and dirt and just sticks, and they build like an entire house. They even made pools, and they make their little things, and they do it like super fast, just with what you have in nature. I don't know if you ever seen that.
We
just
like
to see it.
Did you say
unfortunately, just before you came, we showed a bunch of that.
I see them all the time. I think they're really good.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
When you see the list that we're going to work with in a minute with our groups, the word cob, C-O-B or C-O-B-B sometimes is that mud on mud with nothing else. Sometimes they'll put straw if they have straw in it. But you have to have the right kind of soil. It usually needs to have a high clay content. So it doesn't just, if it's real sandy, it'll just kind of fall all over. So yeah, what's available, like you say, in the community, that's actually the smartest way to build anyway. We've gotten away from it in the United States completely. And I think it's a problem, We've got too many people too. If you move 1 million people next to a forest and you build out of wood, that forest is going to go real quick, That's a problem too, right? So nobody likes to talk about overpopulation, but I do, because that's a real problem, I mean, none of the solutions we have are going to work if we have too many people. So anyway, so let's break into groups, and then we'll talk about where we're from, or any of our relatives or ancestors that you know about. For instance, some of you are from Mexico, but a lot of you have parents that were from Mexico, or even grandparents, and you may go visit their homes, so you are aware of what's going on in Mexico or Central America or South America in Carla's case, right? So we can talk about that. So let's do that, just so you guys can do a little talking, and I'll shut up for a while. So breakout rooms, assign manually, create. So room 1, we want Monica Campbell. And Esperanza?
Yeah.
And Esperanza?
Yes. You come with me, right?
And who else?
And
Gerardo?
Gerardo, please.
Yeah. And was Israel in before or no?
Yeah, he's here.
No, but does he want to go to your breakout room?
Oh, do you want to come with us, Israel? Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, he's a
And
yes.
and Levy and Lionel, were those people that had been there in the past?
Lionel was, I don't know if he wants to. Anybody else want to come in our group to talk about the different housing types? All right, that's good.
Okay, so I'll open that. You ready?
Thank you.
Okay. 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 Takes a while for her to disappear. So can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's again so quiet, it freaks me out. Usually, if you leave your video on, then I get your background noise. So I get a little bit of a tss. And then when you shut it off, it's like, uh-oh, we're in a void, we're in space. So we'll let Carla and Jakub talk. Is Jakub in this group? Yeah. In a second, because they've already shared a little. But do any of the rest of you have experience with any kind of building where you're from originally, or your parents or grandparents or relatives in another? It could even be out of California. It doesn't have to be out of the country, or out of the country.
Well, where my parents are from, I've seen
Luis.
the brick method used.
Adobe bricks?
No, just regular bricks.
Just regular brick. And where is that, Luis?
It's in Jalisco,
Jalisco.
Mexico, yeah.
And they actually use regular, like red brick? Is it red?
Yeah, and then the joists are metal.
Uh-huh.
And they stack them. So they do like sections, and they stack up, and then they'll move on.
And the metal joists, are those for the ceiling?
Yeah, and the walls.
And in the wall, and for support in the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bricks, one of those things that I don't know if there's, does Jalisco have any earthquakes?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, Mexico's got a lot of earthquake country. I think most of it. So you would have to have some, if you just built brick by itself, it would probably fall down.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs a little.
You need a structure. Yeah.
Yeah, a little structural support, right? I didn't know they built straight brick. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I have a question. In 16th century, like this in India,
Yeah.
Shah Jahan and those king, they built a big fort like on that.
Right. Like the Red Fort and those, yeah.
Yeah, Red Fort. How would they cool it out? Like they said, when the hot weather is like 110 Fahrenheit, they sit somewhere and the air passes from the wall and comes very cold.
Yeah, that I just saw a film on that. The design of the architecture in India from those Mughal, we call them, they were Muslim kings, but the Mughal kings.
Mughals.
Yeah, was actually a Persian design. I thought it was more Arabic, but it's, I think the Arabs got it originally from Persia too. But the Arabs and the Persian, I know the Arabs developed a venting where they had stacks that went up in the air and it would draw cool air in.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. And then also the use of pools, like in the Taj Mahal, where there's a big pool in front.
Oh yeah, no, those are for ablution. They before they enter to the prayer. That's another thing. They make tombs, the big tomb.
Yeah.
So they said the sunlight will, dawn from the heat all the way to beneath the floor.
But a lot of places, like in Spain, the Moorish architecture, those were not Arab, but those were Muslim also in Spain. And they always had a lot of pools because the wind would blow across the pools. So a lot of cultures use bodies of water where there's wind, and they put the house behind where the wind's blowing. Like in Brazil, nobody here from Brazil. The government buildings in what's the capital, Sao Paulo, have big pools of water next to them in between the wind and there, and it blows cool air over the water into the buildings. Pretty smart, right?
So what is the purpose of the tomb? Like in all Muslim, you go to the mosque and all the culture, they build tombs.
The tombs are just burial places for famous people, right? Like
no
the Taj
benefit.
Mahal is a tomb for
Yeah.
the king's wife. Yeah. No, the tombs are the tombs are burial places.
Do you mean domes?
Well,
Yeah.
the tombs have domes, and what do they call Islamic
The mosques?
mosque? Yeah, thank you. I was going to say temple. It's not quite right. Mosque. Yeah, the mosque have domes too. So a dome itself doesn't distinguish what kind of function the building is.
We have in Carpinteria, when you pass by the Carpinteria, there's a house.
Yeah.
They build a dome.
Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful architecture, that tomb architecture. It's really nice. Anybody else have any experience from anywhere else? You know, the nice thing about Mexico is it's very different from place to place. So they may not do brick. Jalisco, what town? Did Luis, like, isn't Jalisco where Acapulco and Mazatlan are?
Yeah, it's around there, but it's San Martin, it's called.
So anybody else familiar with any other parts of Mexico? Mexico is really varied. I mean, those are get the ocean temperance, but a lot of Mexico is desert, drier. And then there's hilly parts too in the middle, right? So
Can you talk about my patio, how to construct a patio, a small one?
You're asking about the
downtown patios, a small one.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to my wife about that, about your interest in that. And have you, I mean, I said I was going to send you a drawing. I'll send you something. I'll remind myself. But, she said, well, why doesn't it go down and just look at all the ones that are there? Have you done that?
Oh, yeah, I did that.
Oh, okay. Because those will be the simplest ways of constructing. If I drew it off the top of my head, it would probably be a lot like what those are. But
what materials do you need? Like, this is my, like, I draw myself, like, I need a flat wood, like, to put my merchant back and forth from my shop, not my shop, my brother's shop. And I'm only confused how to build small walls, like the small walls on the corner. I'm just confused with that part. So do I need a roofing on top of that, or no?
Who's familiar? Who walks down State Street recently? Anybody? And you're not all from Santa Barbara, but I think, I don't know. I know some of them have roofs because it does rain here, and they're just looking out for the times when it's rainy that they still want to have customers buy food.
I'm planning to do without roof, so I can just open.
I think some of them don't have a roof.
A big umbrella, so that would be more safer for them.
Yeah, if you build without a roof, the rainy season's mostly over. We have occasional rains otherwise, but the big downpours are over. So you could build an open one and get away with it pretty well.
What kind of material I needed? Like, what kind of wood?
Well, I would do it's not structural, so you just need the minimum. So if you have it open, like the little walls, would they be closed off or would they be see-through?
See-through.
Well, then you just use 2x4s, and you have to keep them from racking, going sideways. So maybe just a diagonal piece in the middle. I can draw you some things. I don't know how, Monica, have you been down to State Street recently?
Not recently, but I've seen some of the outdoor things you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like I live kind of close to like upper state, and there's a restaurant that has a really nice one outside, but they have like a, you know, like a 3 or 4 foot sort of like a half of a wall, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So, oh, you know why I came back? Can you allow me to share screen so we can look at something in our
Oh,
group?
darn. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
So that would be,
Allow multiple participants to share.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be back in a little bit. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Let's see. I need to pin myself. Yeah. So so this is the framing issue, a structural issue. So if you have a wall, looking at a wall, you want it to be square, rectangular. And the weakness of a wall is it'll tend to parallelogram, right?
Okay.
That's why they put braces across walls, so they can't do that. Because if you just have a wall without a brace, if you push on it, it's going to go into a parallelogram. That's the weakness of a wall. Jakob, are you seeing this?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have you on the top. So people put braces to keep that from happening. When you have a side wall, this is looking down. These walls kind of push on each other, right? And that'll keep it straight. But you still need some kind of diagonal brace. So you could build little sections, like say, how you have any idea what the dimensions are going to be?
I'm planning to for
Like
9
10
by 12 or 10
10
by 14.
Okay, say 10 by 14. So this would, to handle it easy, this would take 2 walls, 5-foot long walls, or they could be 10 foot. And then you need an opening somewhere. So these could be 6 foot and 6 foot, 3-foot opening.
I'll do 3 side wall.
3 side walls, not have any on this end? Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So each of these panels would be, like, just say this one's 7 feet, and it's, 3 feet high, maybe.
Yeah.
So when
not
they're
too
sitting
much.
down, they can see over it.
Yes.
So you could have a 7 foot, 2x4 this way, 2x4 across here, and then just put a diagonal one across there, and that would secure the wall.
Okay.
Usually when they put plywood on it, that does the same thing. But if you want to see through, you don't want plywood, so you could just do a diagonal like that.
So what should I put beneath that? Like
Well,
how
this would all be on a platform, which would be plywood. No, not plywood. Individual boards like this. So the rain, if it did rain, it could go through. And then those would be on top of joists. And those joists could be right on the ground. So you have a joist, just a joist system. Then you'd have 2x6 or 2x8 boards on top of that. Or 2x4, but usually they go a little bigger. That would be all of these going the length. And then you'd have, and then that would be it. Let me take my dog downstairs.
Patrick, why I do not have the program on my canvas? It's just removed.
Who was that, Jakub?
Yeah.
So let me write a note here. What I want you to do is I'll send you an email
Okay.
because I can't do it now, and I'll get the name of a person that can help you, because you need to talk to them and tell them what goes on. It won't do for me as a middle party. I'll hear from you, and then they'll ask me a question. I'll go, I don't know about that. So I know what departments give faculty help, but I don't know who gives students help, but I'll find that out. And it's for Canvas. Does anybody else have Canvas problems?
Because
And
I do
Jakub-
remember you told me like anything happen, your number should be on Canvas. So I'll try to go to Canvas to text you that I'm not able to log in, and in Canvas the program is not there.
Okay. How about, and Zoom we talked about, so you're okay with Zoom? For
Yeah.
Carla, is Carla in this group? Yeah, Carla. For Carla and anybody else that was late, I don't know who came in late. Carla? She may not be there. Okay.
What kind of nails you use for construction?
For that, I would use screws, because when you get done with the screws, you can just unscrew it and you can preserve the wood. If you start nailing and then you unnail it, you might damage the wood.
Screws, okay.
Yeah. And
does it have a certain length or something, specific one?
yeah, when you're going from a 2x4 into another 2x4, you got 1.5 inches, so they should be at least 3 inches long.
3 inches long, okay.
That'll give you 1.5 inches into the wood. And you have the wood like this. If it's 2x4, that's the cheapest. You don't need much because it's not structural. A 2x4, just 2 screws is enough. Maybe 1/2 inch from each edge.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many pieces of wood I need?
Well, you need, a bottom, a top, and 2 sides for however long your modules are.
Okay.
You can make this as one whole piece, but if you're working alone or just with one other person, it's kind of nice to have modules so you don't, so they're lighter to move around.
Okay.
And screws, you should pre-drill. Get a drill that's slightly narrower than the width of the thickness of the screw, and pre-drill it, because otherwise you may crack the wood a little bit.
Okay.
Takes a little bit longer, but it's, if you got 2 drills, one with a screw head and one with the.
How many tools I need?
Well, one screw gun with that can drill the screw in, and then one screw gun that can pilot it. They call it pilot. Do the hole first.
Okay. So I need to make a hole in the wood and then screw it.
Yeah, and the hole should be a little smaller than the thickness of the screw. Otherwise, the screw will just go around.
Okay.
So, Francisco, do you know that? Have you used the screw gun before?
The drill?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's the impact one that usually works best for I guess piloting.
Yeah. So they call that piloting when you do a hole first. That makes it less hard on the wood when you drill. So anybody else want to share anything about, oh, I know. Jakub, I have a question for you.
Yes.
In that mud construction in the villages, you've been out to villages and seen it? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. What kind of roof does it have? Can you tell?
It's the same one you call, what do you call koi? They make it like koi. Is it cob or koi?
Cob. Yeah.
Yeah. They
But
build
how does it,
like that.
how does it hold up? Do they have to put branches and trees first?
They put a piece of wood, a whole wood, like tree, like
Yeah,
around it.
yeah.
They
And then
put
they
it
put the
down.
mud on, they put leaves and mud on top of that.
I do have the picture of my house. I can show you maybe.
That kind of construction is about as old as we have on this planet, you know? Except for, well, it varies. But if you look at, and have any of you that live in Santa Barbara, grew up in Santa Barbara? How many here grew up in Santa Barbara? Nobody? You did. Jasmine, you did? Anybody else? Or how about Santa Barbara County? Like
Yeah, this is,
Lompoc or, yeah, okay.
Did you see
So you
this?
know about the Chumash Indians, yeah?
Yeah.
Most of you? Jasmine, you know about the Chumash, yes? The Native Americans that were here in this area, Goleta and Santa Barbara, and
I know.
yeah, San Ynez and all the way up to
Lompoc.
San Luis Obispo and all the way down to Malibu. So they built just out of branches.
Can
And
you
then they
see?
had, huh?
That's the Afghanistan house.
Oh yeah,
Like I
okay.
made a video. It's not my
Wow.
house, but it's like all muddy, all over the place. Can you
So
see?
yeah, where is that?
This is Afghanistan.
Yeah, but what town?
Kabul, Kabul,
Oh, it's
Kabul.
on the outskirts of Kabul, maybe, huh?
No, inside the Kabul.
Really?
Main place, yeah.
Wow.
I can play the video. Let me play the video. Here.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
This is all mud.
Yeah. Wow. Why'd
I
you take a
wonder if
picture?
Kabul gets its name from the architecture. Because Kabul and Kabul.
When it's a okay, in Arabic there is a two-word bar K. It's one K and one Q. So this
Oh.
one it spells like Kabul, we said.
Mhm.
So in American pronunciation, you say like Kabul.
Yeah. Yeah. Is Kabul, does that mean anything in Arabic?
So in Kabul they use a dirty Farsi language.
Yeah.
Not
Oh, yeah,
the
that's right. That's right. Kabul's Farsi. Sorry.
yeah, but it's just a name they put it on.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the. I take a picture and hold on, let me show you. This is a very good one. This is my house.
Oh, wow. Oh, beautiful. Is that wood, that little structure?
Yeah, let me zoom in.
You know, that's funny because Santa Barbara has those. Moorish architecture has. Have you ever seen
Sure.
downtown on State Street? You'll see this little wooden balcony come out.
You see that? There's a
Yeah.
wood coming out
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. Interesting. What is that inside there? Can you go in there from the inside?
That's for yeah, you can go there.
It's like a little resting room up there.
No, that's for the security guards. They sit over there before you enter. They will check it. Yeah, we give it to the seat over here. You can see.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
I'm talking about these woods. You see in
Yeah.
they have a hole. These
Yeah.
all wood. And the
Yes.
rain time, all the water comes over there.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
Anybody else? Carla, back to Peru. So the house, did you live in the same place the whole time you lived in Peru?
Yeah, but I visit like my mom's not really from the city. She lived like what you would call up on the mountains.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you know, but in my country is the jungle, the close to the ocean. That is where I like live. That is close to the the ocean. And
Yeah.
then they have the. I've been in the jungle, not that like the city of the jungle, because then you have the areas that is like more deep inside. I never been in the deep inside too
Yeah.
either.
Right.
But I noticed the houses there, like in the jungle, are different majority than the ones in the city. They're very, I don't know, they call it quincha. It's made of adobe.
Uh-huh.
I think I got it here. Is the quincha the traditional one used in the countryside modular prefabricated system based on the recent research activity? Traditional quincha construction doesn't require per foundation. This reduces the cost and the time of construction of the house. Quinchas houses found in the country and small pueblos on the country are built by. It's just like mud and like
But are they,
know.
do they make bricks out of it, or is it just,
No, yeah, you make brick first,
yeah,
and you like pan it out there, sort of thing.
yeah,
And they literally just majority are just leaves
yeah,
in there because it's the jungle, you know.
yeah, sure, sure. That's what
But
they have.
like in the city where I'm really from, I'm with the concrete, like I told you guys before, you know, and they just brick by brick and cement, and they do with the metal because you know you need to have your base. But those ones there, I don't see them have the base, the nicest one, because they have different type of quincha buildings. The ones that they have a little bit more money and they build it nicer
Sure.
are different, are more polished, and
Uh-huh.
they have
Sure.
like their they have a system in their bathroom. It's a way different, and they don't spend that much money into
Yeah.
build it. It's just really like little money. That's what I say. It's for the people that don't want to pay that much.
Right.
So
What, how do you spell quincha?
uh quincha, I can write it here for you.
Quincha, right, probably, right?
Yeah, we
Okay.
use a lot of K in my country.
And what does that have a meaning, an exact, translated meaning in English?
Quincha is like a Quechua thing, and it mean what it is, you know, like the whole process. It's a
Oh,
Quechua.
oh, okay, okay, got
It's the
you.
native language. Like,
Yeah. So you said you speak the native language, right?
oh no, I can
Oh,
understand it a little
oh, you
bit
can understand it, yeah.
because I have family who live like how I say that I have family in the jungle, and
Yeah.
in the jungle they speak like a native language.
Yes.
And
Okay.
also in Cusco I have family and they speak Quechua there. So they say something I can get a little bit, but I don't
Oh, okay.
speak. When I try to speak it, they make fun of me, you know, like, oh, I speak English and I speak this language, and they start speaking. I don't understand that. So they speak it fast. I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. You know, Americans, white Americans are so ignorant of all that stuff. I find it really fascinating, all the different languages in Central and South America besides Spanish. You know, we think, oh, they speak Spanish, or Portuguese. Wrong.
Patrick, I have another thing to share. Look
Yeah.
on this picture.
Okay.
This is built in 16th century.
Oh, that's in
This is the
Afghanistan,
mosque.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, this is India.
Oh, India. Okay.
This is India, and let me show you one more. One more. Like, can you see this one? This is Red
Yeah.
Fort.
Yeah, that's the Red Fort. Yeah. Nice.
So when you go on these tombs, like if it's the Fahrenheit is like 120 outside, when
Yeah.
you go inside, you feel so cold.
Yeah. Well, many of you students have been in Adobe buildings, right? Maybe in your homes in other parts of America, of Central America or South America or Mexico. But Adobes are cooler. That's why they have them. In the
So
hot weather, they're great to be inside. Are you kidding?
material, yet they never broke down.
Yeah.
See this one?
Yeah.
They never broke down. Like this is Red Fort. Like this is built in 15th
Oh, yeah.
century.
Yeah, I know.
And it looks beautiful and it's still solid over there.
Yeah.
Like this is a bridge, long bridge.
Right.
So they never like break down or something. Like it's been more than 100 years
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
What is it made? Like soil?
Well, those look like, I think some of the Red Fort may have some brick, fired brick. When you take adobe, any kind of clay soil, and you make a brick, you have a form and you make a brick. When that form dries, when the brick dries, you take the form off. And then if you want it to last, you fire it in an oven, you bake it. That's where a lot of countries lose all their wood. They baked so much adobe, they cut down all the trees. They didn't have any trees left. Another problem with overpopulation, people don't realize that a lot of wood has gone into firing things. So, so you're back. We're back together, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to close the breakout room? Just Israel came back, but I don't know if Esperanza and Gerardo came back. But yeah, we talked about all the different types, and we talked about, most people in our group mentioned that like in their village or like their grandmothers had like adobe houses. So that was pretty.
At what houses?
The adobe.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we looked at some images of like adobe houses in Jalisco and different parts of Mexico. And
yeah. Now the thing about building materials is two things. One is what's available locally. That's always the case in indigenous and up until recently. And then there's the weather is the other factor. So unfortunately, a lot of places, what was available locally wasn't insulating for the cold times. So a lot of cultures, they just lived with cold rooms because they couldn't figure out a way to insulate. So we've learned a lot about insulation in the last, that's probably the best thing the modern building movement has donated, is really good ways to insulate so people can live more comfortably in cold weather.
I have experience with steel and concrete in Kalinga.
Kalinga, California.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fuck.
Okay, got ya.
I was on the 3-yard over there and it was cold as shit.
Yeah.
And I just had the luck of the draw. My cell was the very last cell on the bottom tier. And
so the outside sun would hit the wall.
It would bake and
yeah.
It would freeze over because I'd have two walls that would get the wind chill factor.
Oh
instead
man.
of being like nested between two other cells.
Yeah.
I was on the very end.
Yeah.
And we could, I'm sure the cheese was loaded with preservatives as it was, but we could keep cheese fresh on the walls for like days. How cold it was in the cell.
So they didn't have any heating in the cells? Any form of heating?
They kind of did, but most of the time the air blew out cold anyways. And
yeah.
I mean, it was a miracle that people were able to get a plastic bag through the little grating and then be able to cover the ventilation, because it would blow in and it would just be colder.
And the walls were concrete, you think?
Oh yeah. Like whenever we would work out, they would sweat with all the condensed moisture.
Oh man. That's the other thing about concrete, is it doesn't stop water. It absorbs water and will transmit water. So you don't want it in a wet place. You know, in India, where there's a lot of monsoon rain, when they build with concrete, the walls get a lot of mold on them, the outside walls. So you go around India and you see a lot of discolored walls. So, you know, it's not the best in a wet climate.
Hey,
so let's
Patrick,
yeah.
Before we get too much further into the last leg of class, I wanted to bring attention to what had happened with Rodney last week.
Yeah, I was just going to turn to that. So great. You want me to set it up for you, preface it? Or no, you just go ahead. You just go ahead. That's fine.
So this is my position.
Yeah.
I've got a educational background in human services and counseling. I have the educational background to run training groups. So even though this is my first Zoom class, it's not too foreign from me, because I know how to pay attention to body language and the amount of participation that's going on.
Okay.
Not to mention I ran groups in prison too. So, and in spite of my youth, I got a lot of respect by the people who were in positions of authority and power. And I was cultivated by lifers. And it was to my surprise of how nice they were being, because I heard, most of the time lifers get a bad rap. If they're set in their ways, it is what it is. If you're in their cell, that's their home. and that's not the way they treated me. And that's a reflection of my former cellmates that were lifers and their opinion of me. And so when I addressed Rodney about how he was ranting at us, he was yelling at us, those of us that were there, about those that weren't. He tried justifying himself by saying, well, we need to treat this like a real job. And I'm like, well, then if this was a real job as well, this is not how HR handles disciplinary issues. You don't complain to other coworkers or employees about other coworkers and employees. So he blew that off. And I brought this up with Linda. My issue with him is that if he can justify everything that he's doing, it's going to happen again, because he feels he's in the right and that the circumstances allow it. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that I can give a good guess or assumption as to, well, he's and I'm speaking in broad terms, he's doing a boomer thing of, you need to respect me, which actually generally means you need to fear me, because respect isn't garnered through berating or belittling anyone. No one respects another person who does that for money. And yes, we did sign contracts. Yes, we are getting paid. And he even managed to say that it was less than minimum wage. But that can't be the basis for why it's acceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, customer service runs really close with of how to treat and respond to a client. Not how I would want to be treated, but how they would want to be treated. And having that counseling background, being able to pay attention of, well, this is offensive. We're being talked down to, we're being yelled at. And it took a little bit before I said something, because I wasn't sure to trust my own feelings. And now that I've given myself time to think about everything, I feel that my feelings and my gut instinct was right. That things weren't appropriate, things weren't acceptable, and that I called them out on that. When we spoke, well, I'm not going to bring that up. So I mean,
so let me, yeah,
go for it.
I want you to keep talking, but let me just interject something here. There's anybody been following the George Floyd trial on TV?
I can't follow it because it traumatizes me.
Yeah, I know it does me too.
Like a week ago, about like a week and a half ago now, Lompoc Police Department tried pulling guns on my stepson. Yeah. And I was yelling and screaming my head off at them that they did not have enough sufficient probable cause to be doing what they were trying to be doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me bring it close to class. So they're having a trial, and the person's, they've got a prosecutor trying to show that the policeman was way out of bounds and actually killed this guy unnecessarily, and the defense, which is has an uphill battle, is trying to other things to defend him. And the reason they do that is because none of us were there. We have video in that place, but the jury and the judge and the prosecutors weren't at the scene. So they have to ask a lot of questions and try to figure out what happened. So that's true of any kind of controversy. So Friday, Monica and Rodney and I had a meeting. We have a meeting every Friday and go over, well, how's the class been going? So Rodney said a little bit about that incident. And then Francisco called me. I talked to Francisco about it. He was pretty upset. But in all those things, I wasn't there. So I hear from Francisco, I hear from Monica, I hear from Rodney. There some overlap, some differences in the way different people saw it. So that's the first thing I want to say is it's really the way you deal with it has to assume that you will probably never know what really happened. What's important is how people were hurt or affected. That's important to deal with because these are people. And not having that go on if that happened. And then there's some issues. There are actually some issues there also about being late to jobs and things that need discussion too. And I can't talk about Rodney. I wasn't there. I can talk about Rodney's character as I know him, which may or may not be relevant because sometimes we know people for a whole life and they go end up shooting their partner. And we said, where did that come from? So even that you can't tell. So I don't want to focus too much on Rodney, what Rodney, what motivated him or what he was doing. I do feel bad that people were upset. That's not good. And mostly why I want to talk about this, and I'm going to let you talk some more, Francisco. I'm not cutting you off altogether. I just wanted to set some parameters here. I want to resolve this to a point where people can go to the class tomorrow and they're on out, Rodney's classes, and not have this wall between them and Rodney, because it's going to be really hard to learn anything and to continue your class. It's going to be painful for you. So I'd like to try to get some kind of resolution. Obviously not total resolution. If your feelings were hurt or you were upset, things were violated in you, that's going to take some time, but you can still come to enough resolution where you can be a student in a class with a teacher and go forward, okay? So that's my aim for bringing this up. I don't want the class to fall apart that way because, you guys are doing great. It's a great class and we have to get beyond this incident. So the two issues I see from this, I've been thinking about it a lot too, is the way people talk to each other and are around each other. That's really important. And it sounds like Rodney was very emotional about what he was saying, and he maybe yelled at people and he blamed people. It sounds like that was part of it. And that's not a great way to talk to people. And I want you to know that about Rodney and myself and Monica, we're teachers, but we're also obviously human beings. And we take our teaching duties as professionals, and professionals don't let things get out of hand and tend not to want to yell and try to be reasonable. But we don't always uphold that. All of us break down here and there. We're not supposed to swear. All of us swear a little bit. I swear a little bit because I know you guys swear, so I know it's not going to offend most of you. But I really shouldn't swear at all. So there's a professionalism that we try to uphold, and you guys expect that, and I think you should demand it. And then there's the humanity that we get triggered by various things. Who knows what triggered Rodney? He's had to deal, he's been a leader of crews and companies for most of his adult life. So he's developed these ideas of how you keep control. And,
that's a bad idea.
Well, here's Francisco, and I know you're sensitive to this. Here's an interesting thing. The ideas we have control are ideas that are developed in American business, capitalist business, and they may not actually be the best ways of doing things. But
that doesn't line up with anything that would be ethical.
Well, yes, possibly. Okay,
Because
we're going to discuss being late, because that's
he's boss and customer at the same time.
Yeah.
So our whole aim is to basically please him because he's a business owner and he's client.
Yeah.
Okay, before we continue, there are some people who were not here on Thursday. So like Sam wasn't here. And
okay.
I'm just going to preface this by saying Rodney's the teacher on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Rodney on Thursday morning before 9:15, those of you who came in late, you might not have even heard it. he started to talk to the students and saying that they were being disrespectful about coming in late in a disrespectful tone. So that's kind of the gist of what happened. And Francisco spoke up, but I'm sure that Francisco wasn't the only one who felt disrespected in the way that he approached the situation. So like before it gets any further, I want everybody else to have a chance to say, like, if you did feel that way or what you felt in that moment. We're talking about behavior and how that affects others. So everyone else, please like unmute yourself. And if you felt, even if you felt a little bit disrespected or you felt he was in the wrong or the right, it's your chance to say something before tomorrow we go back into the classroom with him. So even if you weren't here, I think on Thursday it's good to hear, because you're going to have to be for the next 5 or 6 weeks going to this class and trying to learn and educate yourself on the topic with a teacher that hopefully you can move forward with. So sorry, before you guys can continue.
Well, I want to hear all that too. Let me just say a few more things and then we'll open it up even more. So that's the way you put it was interesting. So Rodney felt, or at least you saw Rodney feeling disrespected for people coming in late. So right or wrong, that was his feeling. So he should have said that, he should, and maybe not made a tirade out of it, but maybe said to everybody, when you come in late, I feel disrespected and I don't like that as a person. If he had said that in a calm way, maybe it wouldn't have set people off. But the fact that what am I trying to say here? There was disrespect all the way around, right? For different reasons. And probably they're all valid. We can get into the disrespect about being late, because I do want to talk about lateness as an issue. So that'll be the last thing we talk about. But you have to realize that there was disrespect all around, and the way,
There's a difference between implied disrespect and direct disrespect. And he took it as implied disrespect,
yeah,
not knowing our own situations.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. That's a good point. So that's another thing, is when you react to something emotionally, you're assuming all kinds of things usually. And it was probably wrong for him to assume that people were late just because they were lazy and didn't take the class seriously. Because there are reasons for being late. There's really good reasons for being late. The setup's a little confusing. I don't consider you guys employees. I consider you students in my class. And we will, Hector wants it, we will, I got it. We will do our classes differently that way. The money's, you guys get the money, that I don't care. That's not, you don't have to be an employee and do anything in the class. Just show up and, talk, and that's all. So why don't you guys talk about feeling disrespected or feeling upset, and then we'll leave the thing about being late. That's an issue I really do want to talk about last.
Well, something that I wanted to bring up, that there's a vast difference in your generation and the next. Your generation believes that you can basically disrespect anybody or ask someone to give up their dignity, their self-worth for money, because you need to please the customer. And that doesn't respect human rights.
Okay, let me stop you right here. Don't say my generation, because I'm not that way at all, and I'm a member of my generation.
I'm a member of my generation.
Yeah, I would say
good,
maybe
bad, and the indifferent.
Yeah,
Good,
I would
bad,
say
and
I would
indifferent.
qualify
And the vast
that.
difference is we fund what we find interest in. There are more YouTubers who just are reactionists because they are funded because people value their opinion.
Yeah.
And this generation goes and spends its money where it wants. And this generation leaves toxic workplaces because if we can afford it, we won't put up with it.
Okay, well, I don't know how important it is to, I think you need to qualify it reasonably, but let's not get hung up on that. And business isn't even that way. We have businesses today that are very oriented. In fact, they're either employee owned, which means they establish all the rules and treat each other the way they want, or we have enlightened businesses that aren't bad on their employees. There's a traditional business structure in America, in capitalist America, that is hard on employees. And that I don't like, and a lot of people in my generation don't like. I write books about changing that. So you're never going to accuse me of being a part of that. But
well, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying your generation, because a generation can span like 15 to 25 years.
Yeah. But
So,
these business
so
practices
if I
go
just
back
said
way
people
back
from the
before they go
whatever
back way
decade.
back to the, when businesses were established in this country.
And that's basically irrelevant because progress is being made, development is being made. And yes, there needs to be a consensus agreement about what traditions we're going to discard, because we can't just wantonly throw away traditions because it's what gave us a foundation to begin with.
Okay.
Okay, before you guys continue, I think you guys both have valid points and they're very broad, but I want to like bring it back to the situation we're talking about. And I know there's other students who felt a certain way. So I want to go back to like, this is all about behaviors and how people are being treated. And in the moment, I want to move forward, and I'm just going to read what some people wrote in the chat. Gerardo said, for me, everything is all right and great. So Gerardo didn't feel any sort of disrespect from it. He took it as it was and he moved forward. Luis said, I took it as a rant and I tend to brush that off because it is his classroom and he is an authority at that point. The rant did, however, take up a lot of class time. So Luis felt that the rant was wasting his time as a student. So again, you're here for you're spending 7 hours a day learning, educating yourself. That was a waste of time for him or for the students. Brianna said, I felt the same way. It was disrespectful, unprofessional, and almost childish even. He doesn't seem to really care about the students, but expect us to care about his life when he goes on and on about a vacation trip that is completely unrelated to class. So seems like part of the issue might be class wasting time, like wasting your time. Like you guys, time is valuable, and I see that, and that's very true. And you're here for the whole day. You've committed yourself. You want to learn and you want to educate yourself. You don't want to waste time. So I see that as another issue besides just feeling disrespected or whatever. You don't want this time about something that's not furthering your education or furthering your where you're going to go with your career. So that's another issue specific to what we're talking about today. And thank you guys for sharing in the chat that did. Yeah. I don't expect you, if you don't feel comfortable saying it out loud, I get it. But those are totally valid points, and I agree with everybody on those. So thank you guys. Anybody else who wants to unmute or share, please do.
The Francisco and I could go on for hours about this because it's not relevant to the class completely. I mean, it is and it isn't. We've got other things we need to do, but this whole idea of how employers treat their employees in America and probably the rest of the world, it's not just America, there's some awful situations everywhere, is a really important point. And maybe we can find a way to make a side conversation of that doesn't waste the time of people who aren't interested in that. Everybody should be interested in that, but the truth is they're not, and it's not fair to take that time. So I know Francisco and I will have many conversations about this because we're both interested in this pretty deeply. But let me try to cut it off for today, and we don't have to end the discussion today. I want you guys to give Rodney a chance, see what he does. And he may not apologize directly. I don't know Rodney that well, but he will make concessions, and he likes students. That it may have seemed like he doesn't care about you guys. That's what some of you wrote and said, but he does, because I talk to him all the time, and he's always talking about students and caring about them. So don't go in there preconceived. Just see what happens Tuesday and kind of be open to it. The other thing is that the disrespect part that he felt about being late, that's an interesting area because it's kind of a really core business thing that you don't be late in this culture. In construction, it's important because if you're on a crew and you're instrumental in that crew and you're late, that whole crew can't work until you get there. So it really it really cuts down on efficiency. Now, I think we're over efficient as a culture, as that work culture, and we can talk about whether that really matters, whether we lose a few minutes. I think that's an open question. But it is a big part of this. And so that reduces, if we're trying to train you guys to get jobs, I mean, not train, but to give you things, skills for jobs, the jobs you're going to go to are usually by this typical American business model, and they're going to expect you to be on time. Now, Francisco's got a point. Maybe that's not that big a deal, and there should be ways to negotiate that. And I would certainly think that should go on, but that may not be the case for most of you when you go to your work. So maybe we should respect what Rodney's saying. And I say the same thing. Being on time is really important. But then when you get into a job or make your own companies, you can look at that and negotiate and see whether that needs to be so strict. And, cause people to go nuts when it's violated. I mean,
just one last thing. Since Friday, you've been playing apologetics for Rodney, having only heard his side and not the whole thing. And like, you talk about ethical sourcing, and we have ethics, they're just different. The way that he spoke to us was disrespectful. It was not done in a respectful manner. And that comes down to professionalism. And as I said on Friday to you, Patrick, like, that was a greater disservice to himself than it was to us, because like, my stepdad's a building contractor. So like, a lot of this stuff, I know a good amount of, or I could just ask my stepdad. What I choose to get out of this, what anyone else chooses to get out of these classes and pursuing a further education, is on us. And as a parent of my own children that are 4 and turning 6 in July, like, yeah, I want my kids to succeed, but I want them to succeed in something that they enjoy and that they can flourish in, not just take up the family mantle of, well, this is what, what's familiar to the family. So I have to respect their autonomy, because they're humans. They may be in midget's form right now, but they're going to grow up. And I know what it was to grow up not being respected and feeling respected, which is to some degree helped shape who I am today. But all the same, whether it's because you're being employed or because there's a contract involved and whatnot, that doesn't give license for us to be disrespectful to one another.
Francisco, let me ask you a question. If you're, who are you closest to in your family when you grew up?
Myself. I was the latched-door key child.
Anybody, any relatives?
No.
Okay. How about friends? Do you have friends that you have close friends?
You don't know how introverted I am. My personality here in the classroom does not reflect 99% of the rest of my life.
Okay. Well, the question I was going to ask is, like, if I were in that class and I was a student and I felt I was disrespected, what I would do is treat that teacher like a family member that had disrespected me. And so your family may have been different. But if my dad had disrespected me at the dinner table, I mean, he had a lot of power, so I wouldn't confront him directly, but I'd talk to him. I'd say, I've talked to him as a human being. So you're upset with Rodney and you're bringing in all this other stuff in your life that may or may not be applicable. Some of it probably is, but that's more than was at the situation. So you should, when you go back to Rodney, go with the situation as it is and talk, but talk in the present, not from what's been building up from the past. Because if you go in with a chip on your shoulder, you're never going to be able to talk to him.
Well,
You know what?
For
I
all
think,
intentional
I think
purposes,
that-
I really don't need him. And he's not a crux in my life of like, I can't move on without him. Like,
Yeah,
you guys are trying to
Francisco.
leverage your position as a license to be disrespectful. And all I'm saying is, no, you don't have that.
Right.
Okay, well, just 1 second. Somebody, another student wants to say something. Go
Oh,
ahead,
great.
Anthony,
Yeah, Anthony.
please.
Hi. So I kind of agree with Francisco as well, because there was a time that I was late and my alarm didn't went on, and on Thursday when I jumped in early, it took forever to let me in. So I kind of felt like a little bit disrespectful at the same time. So, but I know he's also a teacher, so I mean, at the same time, it's between the both side of it. So I can't choose which side is it. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
you.
Anthony. Carla, go ahead, Carla.
I just want to say from my point that when I'm late, I'm already like super scared and I'm beating myself up, for it. So, and I take full responsibility for it. And I'm just gonna say that that's my say. And it's really, I hate being late. I dislike it. It's horrible. So, and I take responsibility. I don't know what else to say than that. And just
Yeah.
think.
Okay, yeah.
Can I say?
Yaku.
Just enjoy.
So, well, with the I forgot his name. The teacher I always remember Patrick. It's a simple name.
Rodney.
I get his point. I didn't feel disrespectful. He was saying his purpose, like, by him. If you are in job or somewhere, you have a contract, like, okay, I'll be there every day. And this is your responsibility to make sure, even though, like he said, if you will be late, you have my number, you can just text me, I am getting late, 45 minutes. That according to this, I feel like he is right. If you have a job or something, the company, 1 or 2 times you will be late, he will just fire you and you will be losing your job and money and everything. His letter is giving you hidden advice, like if you're doing something, commit to it and be respectful. And he's giving a very good, advice in the meantime too. So I don't feel like too uncomfortable and disrespectful, but I feel like in positive way, he's giving us good advice with his education and experience in his life. Is because he have a construction company too. He's saying like, if you are my employee and you will be late and you're giving me contract, I will be firing you, or something will be, the consequences will be bad for you. And he's giving you option too. Text me, I'm late, I will be late. He said that's okay too. Inform.
I don't have anything specifically against what he said.
Yeah, everybody
the
agrees.
delivery.
It's the way that he said it. Yeah,
The delivery,
everybody
yeah.
agrees. Like, yeah, that's like, we all learned a lesson. It's a good lesson, but it was the way that he said it. And I think like you have to think like it's a teaching moment for Rodney as well, because he put his emotion into it, and the way that he addressed it, he put his emotion into it, and it was wrong. Like, we can all agree, like, yeah, you can't be late, all that, the logistics of it, but the way it was presented to the class was not right. So I think we can all agree, like, that's the emotional part that he put into it. And just use that as you move forward. Like, he made a mistake. He put too much emotion into the way he presented and delivered that information to us. So I think we can all agree, like, he's going to learn something from that. When he comes into the classroom tomorrow, he's going to be learning within himself. The way that he delivered his information was wrong. So I think that we all agree, like, the logistics of it, don't be late, is important for sure. Israel, go ahead.
Yeah, well, let's say something. Everybody is different, and I totally respect Francisco's opinion, and I respect the Ron opinion. But yeah, I think he went a little off on the situation. And for me personally, I will do what he did on Thursday, but directly with the persons that were late. You know what I'm saying? Because most of us were on class on time, probably a few minutes late or whatever. But I think that's what I will do, like talk to the persons that were actually late, because he was like talking to all of us, and
Yeah.
that's, I think that's my.
If,
But,
that comes up in my, that's come up in my classes. If I was addressing half the class or a third of the class, for some reason, like being late, would it help if I said, no, I'm not talking to the whole class, I'm just talking to this third of people that continue to be late? Would that be a fair way to start that conversation?
I think so, yeah.
Because teachers tend to just talk, and everybody assumes they're talking about the whole class, and often we're not. We're just talking about a fraction, but we don't make that distinction good enough, I think.
What if, being that the class is online and on Zoom, and we have the ability for direct messages, that because you can't hold a few students behind after class, well, I guess you could, but I mean, just given the differences of not having in-person classroom and it being online, like if it's a third, which is about 30%, so 3 out of every 10, maybe just a direct message to those specific people. If it's
Yeah.
only 3 out of the 12 or 10.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think everybody agrees. But in that moment, he didn't think.
Yeah.
He thought emotionally. He didn't think. Obviously, that's obvious. Like, I should be speaking to these students directly.
Yeah.
And in that moment, he got too emotional, and he went off. And like, I think, yeah, if you like, we've all had the weekend to think about it, and if he thought about it, he would definitely agree with you. Yes, I should address those students that are not coming in or coming in an hour late. But
and not so emotionally. Something got triggered in him from, his past too, that did that. What about using chat if students could respond? It's more comfortable for a student to respond to a chat when it's a dicey subject or observation.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't come off as pointed. What if a student commented on something the teacher was doing in the chat, and the teacher could read it and say, oh, someone just said I was being too aggressive or something? What do you think? No? Yeah.
We put stuff in the chat
that.
and you guys don't always pay attention or notice it.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't always.
like, I think that's a good idea, but you're not gonna like say in the chat, he's being a dick, like.
It's too bad. That'd be great. It's too bad we don't live in that kind of culture.
And that's true. Like, not all teachers look at the chat or really read it.
All right.
I mean, I look at it because I see it, but it is, that is a way, like, honestly, like if you ever need to, you can direct message any other person in the chat. If you need to talk to someone else in the class or bounce off ideas off of somebody and you're not comfortable saying it to the teacher in any Zoom situation, you can always do that. So, I mean,
Okay. Well, it's 12:04, so we don't want to hold you guys up, but Francisco and some of you who were more upset by it than others, I'm totally willing to chat about it. You can get here early, like I'm here at 8:30 in the morning. I know it's hard for you to make 9 sometimes because you got a lot of stuff going on in your life, but
yeah, don't be late.
Yeah. Or maybe during a break time, we could go to a chat room so it's more private. I mean, a breakout room. So I'm willing to keep this conversation going, and we can do it as a class too, but we can't resolve it all today. So we did a great chunk today. I'm really happy with what everybody said. It's a big, it's a huge issue. It's the issue the culture is going through right now. So of course, it's going to show up in our classroom too. And I think, the culture hasn't resolved it. So it's something we're going to be ongoing thinking about. And I'm glad that people are bringing it up because our culture needs to change for sure. So this is important. So let's can it for today, see how tomorrow goes. I'll be with you again Wednesday morning. And if we don't want to take up everyone's time all the time to do it because there's some people that didn't consider it that big a deal. So we'll figure out a way to have separate conversations if we need to. Okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah, yeah, Luis.
Oh no, I thought we were being dismissed. Sorry.
Oh,
bye.
yeah, you were waving. Okay.
You're ready
Okay,
to
you are
go.
being
Bye.
dismissed.
See you guys
Okay.
tomorrow.
All right. See you guys Wednesday, and she'll
Thank
see
you
you
All right,
guys.
see ya.
Thanks
All right.
for talking about it, guys.
Yeah, yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Hector, are you still there? Hector?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So you came in a little late today, right?
Yes, I did.
So are you having any problems that you need help with?
Um, Mostly I was just wondering how I could make up the work I had missed.
Um, were you just late this time today?
Yes, this time and the last class before this one.
In my class?
Yes.
Well, no, not right now. I'm not too worried about it. Did you have reasons for not being here?
I just had some Wi-Fi problems at the beginning of the morning, and well,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So,
Hold on.
so we're recording these, right?
Oh yes, yes, I know.
So go to your Canvas and go to announcements, the announcements tab, and there'll be a date for each video. And if you miss, like, they say you came in halfway through, then just listen to the first half of the video.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay. All right. Do that. That'll be good.
All right then. Well, so I
And if
wouldn't
you're,
have to make up
yeah,
work.
if you're having any other mechanical problems like Wi-Fi or Zoom or Canvas, let me know. We'll try to give more help on that.
All right. Thank you for the courtesy.
Okay. You're welcome. And I'll see you Wednesday then.
All right. Well, till then.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too.